Welcome to the Explainer. Today we are going to fundamentally redefine something you probably walk past literally every single day. We're talking about weeds. But not as those annoying garden pests you spend your weekends pulling up. We are looking at them as completely hidden nutritional powerhouses. Seriously, get ready to completely change how you look at your lawn.
So think about this for a second. It's a pretty bold question, right? What if the absolute most nutritious foods on the planet are not neatly stacked up in the produce aisle of your local grocery store? What if they're actually growing right in your backyard, pushing up through the cracks in your driveway, or lining every roadside you've ever walked down without even a second glance? We just sort of assume that premium nutrition requires a premium price tag, but it turns out, and modern science is proving this, our great-grandparents actually had it right all along.
It's kind of crazy when you really think about the irony of our modern diets. On one hand, people are spending 40, maybe 50 bucks on these fancy imported superfood powders from halfway across the world. And on the other hand, a free weed pulled straight from the driveway. Most folks have absolutely no idea that while they're spending big money on exotic supplements, nature has already placed something significantly more nutritious, deeply medicinal, and completely 100% free right outside their front door. But instead of eating these plants, what do? We pull them up, we poison them, and we throw them away.
All right, so here is our roadmap for this explainer. 1. Everyday vitamin powerhouses. 2. Nature's free medicine cabinet. 3. The invasive delicacies. And 4. Rules for safe foraging.
Let's jump right into Section 1, Everyday Vitamin Powerhouses.
To kick things off, let's talk about how some of these everyday plants chemically outcompete standard store-bought produce. Take iron density, for example. If you compare commercial spinach, beef, and stinging nettle, well, that feared prickly weed completely dwarfs both the spinach and the beef in iron content per gram. It's an absolute iron giant. It also packs way more calcium than dairy milk and is around 25% protein by dry weight. Now, I know what you're thinking, but it stings. Right. Well, here is the crucial trick. Heat neutralizes the sting entirely. If you just blanch nettles for 60 seconds, they are perfectly safe to eat, and they taste kind of like a richer, earthier spinach. It's like the steak of the plant world actually learned to defend itself because it knew exactly how valuable it was.
Next up is a number that should honestly be printed on the front page of every health magazine out there. 3 times. Gram for gram, this tiny little weed called hairy bittercress contains 3 times the vitamin C of an orange. 3 times! Plus, it contains glucosinolates. Those are the exact same class of cancer-preventing and detoxifying compounds that you find in broccoli. It's got this great, sharp, peppery flavor, and it essentially acts like a totally free vitamin C supplement, just growing wild in your garden pots.
And the list of these trail snacks and survivalist plants just keeps going. Take wood sorrel. It looks a lot like clover, but has this incredibly bright, citrusy, sour flavor. Kids in Europe actually used to eat it as a trail snack. Then you've got chickweed, which is this amazing survivalist plant that can grow under light snow, giving you fresh vitamin C exactly when fresh greens are the hardest to find in the dead of winter. But purslane? Purslane is mind-blowing. It is the only weed with omega-3 fatty acids. It actually contains more plant-based omega-3s than most fish oil supplements per gram of fresh weight. It is literally a fish oil supplement that skipped a middleman and decided to grow directly in your garden bed.
Rounding out our powerhouses are what I like to call the forgotten greens. You've got lamb's quarters, which is a cousin of quinoa and actually beats commercial spinach in calcium and iron. Fat hen is an ancient grain so incredibly old that its seeds were found in the stomachs of those perfectly preserved Scandinavian bog bodies. Then there's wild watercress, which vastly outperforms the stuff you buy at the store. Studies even show it reduces DNA damage. And of course, the dandelion. It's a plant of total, complete nutrition. Literally every single part is edible, and it's packed with more calcium than milk and more beta-carotene than carrots. These are the plants that fed our ancestors for generations before industrial agriculture just sort of pushed them aside for convenience.
Moving right along to Section 2, Nature's free medicine cabinet.
So we've seen the vitamins, but let's dive into some actual clinical healing by looking at the medical history of yarrow. According to legend, Achilles used it way back in ancient Greece to stop the bleeding wounds of his soldiers. Fast forward thousands of years to the 20th century, and field medics in both World War I and World War II were actually carrying dried yarrow in their medical kits. And today? Modern laboratory research proves exactly why it works so well. Yarrow contains compounds with demonstrated hemostatic effects. That means clinical studies confirm it genuinely actively accelerates blood clotting. It is literally a field first aid kit just growing right out there in the meadow. Which brings us to a super fascinating piece of history. Broadleaf plantain is native to Europe, but it ended up spreading across the globe in the wagon tracks of colonizers. Native Americans quickly noticed this new plant popping up everywhere and called it white man's footprint. But within just a few generations, they also learned how to use it medically. Why? Because the leaves contain something called allantoin, which is a compound that actively promotes cell repair. In fact, a peer-reviewed clinical trial actually found that a plantain ointment improved the healing of second-degree burns better than standard medical treatments. Think about that. That is published science about a weed currently growing in the cracks of your sidewalk.
Then there's common mallow. It's a plant with these little seed clusters that kids sometimes call cheese wheels. Well, it is absolutely packed with mucilaginous polysaccharides. Now that's a mouthful, but basically they are complex carbohydrates that get a little bit slippery when mixed with cold water. So when you drink mallow as a tea, it acts as this internal, incredibly soothing coat of protection for your throat and your digestive tract. It has been a traditional remedy for dry coughs for centuries, and today it has absolute verified modern research backing it up. Let's quickly run through 3 more incredible clinical healers. First, red clover. It contains isoflavones that multiple randomized controlled trials have confirmed will significantly reduce menopausal hot flashes. Next is elderberry, which is basically your neighborhood pharmacy. A double-blind trial found that elderberry extract shortened the duration of flu symptoms by an average of 4 whole days. And finally, hawthorn. European regulatory bodies have actually formally approved hawthorn preparations for cardiac support, mainly because its berries genuinely improve exercise tolerance in people with mild to moderate heart failure. I mean, it is essentially a hedgerow cardiologist.
All right, let's get into Section 3, the invasive delicacies. Did you know we can literally eat our way out of certain ecological problems? Some plants are major ecological pests, like garlic mustard, which actually alters soil chemistry and aggressively outcompetes native plants. But ecologists have figured out the single best control method: just tell people to eat it. It makes an absolutely incredible, sharp, peppery pesto. And then there's ground elder, which is notorious for relentlessly smothering domestic gardens. But get this, it was originally brought to Northern Europe by monks specifically as a medicine for gout and as a reliable staple spring green. So by harvesting these aggressive spreaders for free meals, you aren't just getting dense nutrition, you are literally performing an act of ecological service. You basically get to be an environmental hero just by making dinner.
Which brings us to our final section, number 4, rules for safe foraging. Now hold on, before you rush out the door to harvest your driveway, we need to cover 3 golden rules that are absolutely non-negotiable. Step 1, 100% identification. Never, ever eat a wild plant unless you are absolutely without a doubt certain of what it is using a reliable field guide. Step 2, forage from clean sources. You want to avoid roadsides that might be sprayed with chemicals or get heavy exhaust. Step 3, cook when necessary. A lot of these plants have incredible benefits, but they require heat to actually be safe to consume.
To show you exactly why these rules are so crucial, let's look at a few specific safety examples. Like we talked about earlier, stinging nettle absolutely must be blanched for at least 60 seconds to completely neutralize those microscopic stinging needles. Raw elderberries are another one. If you eat them raw in large amounts, they can cause severe nausea. They always need to be cooked to safely unlock their amazing antiviral properties. And wild watercress? Because it grows in running streams, it must be harvested far upstream, well away from any agricultural runoff or livestock access. When it comes to foraging water-based plants, water quality matters enormously.
And honestly, that really brings us to the core thesis of this entire explainer. In our modern world, we've been totally trained to believe that value has to be rare. We think that real nutrition must be packaged, heavily labeled, and really expensive. But as these 20 plants prove, value isn't always rare. Sometimes, the absolute most medically significant, nutritionally dense food on Earth is literally growing right there in the pavement cracks. Nature has spent thousands of years developing food that is adapted perfectly to your local soil. And best of all, it is completely free.
So, I'm going to leave you with this question to chew on. Which of these hidden superfoods will you discover outside your door today? Is it going to be the iron-packed nettle, the vitamin C-rich bittercress, or maybe that skin-healing plantain? The true wealth of the natural world is literally waiting right in your own neighborhood. You just have to change your perspective, step outside, and finally, look down. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, happy and safe foraging.